Right? So I will call to order the regular meeting of the Engineering and Operations Committee and a special meeting of the Board of Directors. And with that, Mr. General Manager, could we have a quorum determination?
Happy to do so, Mr. Chairman. Director Tommy Favai. Here. Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here,
Director Gloria Gray. Director Don Deere. Director Scott Houston. Mr. Chairman, we do not have a quorum of the Board of Directors. However, we do have both members, the chair and the member of the committee. So we're ready to proceed.
thank you. And next is public comment. Do we have any public comment, Mr. General Manager?
We have not received any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so now by raising your virtual hand. And Mr. Chairman, I do not see a request for public comment.
Thank you. So we will move on to the next item, presentations. I don't believe there's any. Are there?
There are no presentations.
Okay, so moving on, we will move to our action calendar. The first item up is the agreement of award for janitorial services for the West Basin facilities. Mr. General Manager, please indicate the item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item begins on packet page 3. And for this presentation, we do have Uzi Daniel, our manager of operations.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. As EJ stated, on page 3, we have the packet on the award for janitorial services. I'm sure everyone's aware that the building, this DLD building, ECL, and our other satellite buildings all require cleaning janitorial services. And we have a contract that will expire at the end of this month with DMS. That contract was for 3 years. In April, we went out to solicit for proposals. We then received 6, as you can see on here, back. We had a pre-proposal meeting. We did have 3 people that evaluated those to look at and rate and grade them. And as you can see on table A, this is the list of prices that did correspond also quite closely with the ranking of that because it was a proposal. I do want to note that the services are for a 3-year contract. However, there are discussions of perhaps if, I know there'll be some discussions later with the board about this building. The contract will allow us to downsize, switch buildings, or whatever we need to do. We'll have that flexibility if needed. And a lot of our contracts allow us also an exit should conditions change for the district. So we do have that. From the different varying proposers, we made sure to look and call references to make sure that who we were recommending did come with some good reviews, and you will see that also in part of the package. I'll go ahead and read the recommendation and then happy to answer any questions. That is that the board authorized the general manager to enter into an agreement with Base Hill Inc. for the procurement of janitorial services and supplies for a term of 3 years from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th of 2028 in the amount of $430,040 with a 10% contingency if needed of $43,004 for a total contract amount not to exceed $473,044. I am happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Director Pavay, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
I have a question. The bid, as you listed it on page 3, was for $353,000. And then the recommendation for award is for $430,000. And that delta is briefly described in the staff report, but could you please go over that and why that was not included in the bid that was submitted by the vendors that submitted on here? Or was it just not submitted by this vendor?
Yeah, so the bid, and you mean for the supplies and so what we do and include in there is we do our own estimates. So, and I should have brought that up earlier. The janitorials, they're responsible for assuring that there is soap and our supplies are always maintained. We have a system, where we check to make sure, that- I'm sure everyone's on this, but just keep track of any heavier uses. And we do an estimate of what that will be, and that is the 77,000 that we came to add on for a 3-year period. And that's not to exceed amount. It could actually end up being lower. That is just the amount that is allocated in there, an estimate about 20,000 per year. Does that answer your question?
Well, actually raises one.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So if it's an add-on that you added to their proposal, based on previous experience of what we purchased in terms of supplies, if the estimate that was made by was based in by the agency tends to be high, is the reimbursement to the contractor based on actual cost? In other words, that they have to submit invoices and you will just pay for the actual cost? And if so, is there any markup on those costs or just actual costs, whatever they are, they invoice it in addition to their service contract?
Correct. They invoice us for the actual supplies, not a markup. I guess that's a fair question. We could check. Do they have a markup behind the scenes? Do we get the invoice from the vendor? That I don't believe we do. I could check on that. I don't remember seeing that, but we do get an itemized list on our invoice of the different supplies, what they, what we had to.
So I would ask that we, since we haven't signed the agreement yet, and that we would put in, as for the reimbursement, they have to submit their actual invoice.
Okay, include their invoices of the supply invoice.
And hopefully, since that apparently has not been discussed, it will not raise, a lot of vendors, for example, will say, that's fine. We will show you the actual invoice, and then we will invoice you the invoice from company Y might be $10 plus 10% our handling fee. And probably has not been discussed. I'd like to see that discussion. And I would prefer that we not pay a handling fee, that they get paid their fee. And then whatever the cost is, if we added it to their contract and they're willing to accept it, that they then just pass it through and submit actual invoice.
So the pass through of the supply vendors and that costs, as opposed to or us purchasing from the purchase. I know that sometimes that can add an inefficiency, so it'd be easier if they could purchase it, but they give us that.
And Mr. Chairman, what I'll do, it's important to note that Nelson Rodriguez has been handling this effort and overseeing the effort. He's not able to be here today. He wanted to be here to present this item. We will get that information and email it out to the committee and board on Friday, so you're aware of what was being proposed. And then that way, when we get to the board meeting on Monday, we'll have a little bit more clarity as far as what those charges are and if there is a markup or how they priced them.
So any comments on that, Director Pavay? Do you like that idea of that they just actually pass through the invoice for whatever supplies they actually purchase?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Since we've added it on. Okay. All right, so we'll move that to the board for approval. And
Well, and we'll mark that as an action item to get that information to understand what their markup or their cost is.
you don't have to put it as an action item. I think
Well-
with the explanation you're gonna send out on Friday is fine. If there's any questions, we probably should pull it, but
Sorry for the dual
and
terminology.
Monday's gonna be a busy day with the budget. So I want to keep Monday's agenda clean.
No, this is just an action item for us to get it out to you on Friday.
All right, and so we will move on to item 5B, which is the extension of the recycled water delivery agreement between the West Basin Municipal Water District, Tesoro Refining and Marketing Company, and the California Water Service Company, agreement number W766. So, Mr. General Manager, would you please introduce that item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item begins on packet page 44. And for the presentation, we do have Eric Owens, our Assistant General Manager.
Good evening, Chair Alvarez, Director Pavai. As you may recall, this item is specifically related to our partners at the Tesoro Refining and Marketing Company, who have been purchasing recycled water from West Basin for just over 25 years. Originally, we had a contract in place that extended all the way through January of this year, 2025. In December, the board approved a 6-month extension to that contract as we were in the process of negotiating what the next phase of contracting for these services look like or for this water. And so we are here tonight to ask for another 3 months to get us through this final push towards a newly negotiated contract that will replace not just these amendments, but the original contract. Staff has been working diligently with their staff as well as Cal Water, because it's important to recognize that this is a 3-way agreement between West Basin as the wholesaler, Cal Water as the retailer, and of course, Tesoro Refining Company as the user. And staff feels that we are very close to finalizing the agreement. We are in the final throes. We believe that we only need 3 more months, and that's really to allow for everybody's final approval processes related to their legal and managerial efforts to approve these before they get signatures applied. But I do anticipate within the next 2 to 3 months, we will be able to bring back a contract that will look ahead to the next term of a new contract. Very pleased with where we're at so far in these discussions. I'm cautious of not giving too much detail, given that we are actively negotiating the contract with between all 3 parties. But this 3-month extension, I believe, will allow us to just get that final push, keep the pressure on all of us to make sure that we are, in fact, working towards a September 1st new contract, and but just allow us that extra time to polish it up and bring it before our respective governing bodies. And so with that, I will say that the amendment, similar to in structure to the amendment that was approved in December, it will continue our fixed payments at the current rate. And for most part, every other aspect of the contract that is in place for the last 25 years will remain in place until we execute the next contract. And so there's very little impact from status quo through this amendment, although it does ensure that we will continue to receive the capital recovery fee to the tune of $178,000 a month for the next 3 months until the new fee is finalized as part of the next contract. I'll leave it at that with for any questions.
Thank you very much. George Clavet, do you have any question?
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you for that. And of the 90 days, I hope you guys are able to reach that agreement, in 90 days. And yeah. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. It's just an extension of the agreement, so, and we can continue to receive, as you stated, the $178,000 a month recovery fees from Marathon. The one question I have is, in the past, and we've talked about this, there is the contribution from Cal Water. I think the $4 million.
Correct.
So where are we with the $4 million contribution?
I've been told on several occasions, and I worked with he's the vice president of CalArt, that the check is ready to go and will be sent upon execution of the longer term agreement. I've been told this repeatedly, and I will tell you, and Eric, can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe they stated that one of their reasons to prefer a 3-month contract is that they want that payment to go out by the end of the year. So rather than extend it 6 months, which we have discussed potentially doing, their preference is to get that check out the door. So
Yeah, I
that's
would
my
just-
understanding of the status.
I would only add to that, EJ, that just very recently, he told me that, or shared with me that his intention is to process both contracts at the same time. So once we have the newly negotiated contract and they have to put that through their processes to be approved, so too will the $4 million.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, I should, just because I may be seeing some of them over the weekend, I do want to give credit to Cal Water Service Company because of their willingness to maintain this effort when it comes to JMM. And so Ken Jenkins and of course Rob Felix, I think have kept their word on this, and I think we're in a good position.
so, thank you very much for that. And I'm glad to hear that we've made progress. This is a payment that has been promised in the past multiple times, and, I can remember a year or two, maybe even 3 years back, that we said we're gonna get the payment, and we still have yet to receive it. So, you didn't quite say the check's in the mail, but the check is being prepared, which is the first step to getting the check in the mail. I hope that will come to pass, because this is money that, some of us have referred to, multiple times, and it's yet to be received. Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing the final agreement and more importantly, seeing the money. Otherwise, let's go ahead and move this if it's okay with Director Tomei.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And then the next item on our agenda is the information calendar, and item 6A is the monthly engineering and operations report. May we have a brief presentation of that?
Yes, happy to be brief. We do have Susanna Lee, our Manager of Engineering. This item begins on packet page 78, but the PowerPoint begins on packet page 84.
82.
Somewhere in between.
No,
We're in the
83.
Good evening, Director Alvarez, Chairman Alvarez, and Director Papai. As you mentioned, I'll go briefly over the presentation before I dive into the details of the presentation regarding the staff report. I just want to highlight a few items that on the production side, barrier is finally we're back in productions in normal operation and mode after a few months with phase 5 projects all activity. So we are back in around 11 MGD. And then I just want to also highlight Uzi's group from the distribution team that they work really tirelessly with Mar Ventures and their partners to flush the pipelines that service to the chargers. And I believe we just got it back. We're back in connections with chargers yesterday, so we're glad that was completed. Other details with other projects, you can read that in the staff report. PV specifically, we are in the final stretch. With the pipeline, we just need the SCE pole to be energized, and that should be, we're expecting that to be energized within the next couple of weeks. And on the pump stations, we received the switchboard, and then it will be completed. The installation will be completed by the end of the month. And we'll be scheduling with SCE to get it energized and we're ready for testing in August. So with that, we can go to the presentation on page 84. Yeah. So today's focus is on water productions and asset management. So those are the brief agenda items. Next slide, please. So just look ahead in June, board meeting, which is next Monday, we'll have a ratification item bring to the board on the expenditures for the ECL backwash supply line for the Title 22 system. And then the fence improvement projects, will be bringing an item to the board to give updates. It might not be an action item, it might actually be an info item because we have not received some of the information that we need. So regardless, we want to bring that item as information to present different options to the board. So how we can proceed with that repairment and replacement. Then we have cathodic protection, field survey that will be coming for award, right? And then also next month we'll be coming to the board for extension of the Torrance refinery agreement. So with that, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, water production. Sorry, can't see that far. Okay, so for second quarter of the year, from March to May, our production overall is 17% below what we budgeted. The major cause is barrier being offline during March and most of April. That was due to the Phase 5 SCADA project. Also, you can see Torrance did have a little turnaround and they have a couple of boilers down. So the production during March to May was also low. Overall, year to date, we are 5% below our budget and ahead. The majority of it because of the barrier production. Next slide, please. This is just to show you which months, like the different productions, and as you can see, barrier was a lot lower than we anticipated. March was completely off. We budget roughly around 800 acre feet for the barrier, so we were not hitting the target. The other one is the Chevron nitrification. They also had some turnaround, so they were not taking as much water as we anticipated. I want to highlight slide next. This is on barrier productions. Staff is happy to report that we're back in productions, and if you can look at the tail on the far right, we're hitting 100% currently at 11.5 MGD. We were at 12 MGD, but there are a couple of wells that went offline the last couple of weeks. So the county said that we're actually at 11.5. We're serving 100% recycled water to the barrier. That's happened to that.
Susanna, could you estimate approximately what production we could meet if we had the demand at the barrier?
Yeah, so right now, with the membranes being cleaned up, if we can hit around 13 MGD, we can possibly go up a little bit. I don't want to push a little bit higher because the Phase 4, we are seeing some issue with the Phase 4 MF membranes, but I feel comfortable that we can go.
So, but, and I apologize, what did you say you can max out at?
13.
13.
And I asked her to highlight that point because today at
I'm gonna have a question.
Today we're at
But you
11.5.
anticipated it. I'll still bring it up.
limited only by the county's injection volumes.
And if you look at the red line versus like the purple, we are hitting the 100% as a week or two ago. So never hit 100%. So we're happy to report that to the board. Any other questions?
No, we'll come back to the question. Just go ahead and finish everything.
That's all on this slide. Next section, we'll be going over some of the asset management and maintenance activities for the quarter. This just shows that our corrective maintenance activities versus preventive maintenance, we are hitting below that industry standard, less than 20%. That BLA staff have been keeping up with the maintenance work. On the graph on the right, it's just showing the hours, the labor hours versus the number of work orders, which is the graph on the left. Question there? Next slide. This two graphs shows the emergency work orders that the staff have to handle in a monthly basis. And we're happy that as of May, we're hitting less than the normal like 60 that we've seen in the past year. So we had around 42 emergency work orders. And the work order cycle time has been edging a little bit up due to some of the recent emergency orders. So, but I think we're still averaging between that 13 to 14 days. So I'm happy to see that thing go up like last July, August, like 16, 17, or even higher. Next slide. This table shows the top 10 corrective maintenance work activities. And here I just wanted to highlight that we have a lot of pinning activities going on with phase 4. And that's why I hesitate to go further up. There's still additional pinning activities for some of the units. And then I also want to point out that we continue to have the stalls handling deep pump issues. So you can see that there was 138 hours that staff had to dedicate the resources to last quarter. Next slide. Here, just showing some pictures, major activities, maintenance activities. We're happy that we finally got this valve, isolation valve repaired. There was a long lead item that we had to procure for almost 10 months. And then we had to make additional modification. What this replacement allows staff to do is that complete isolation of citric acids going back to the EQ basin that might upset the Title 22 process. With that valve being off or not out of commission for so many years or months, we had to utilize more expensive chemical cleaner instead of citric acid cleaning phase 5 membrane. Next slide. This slide shows the kind of follow-up activities for the ratification item that I'll be bringing to the board on Monday. We repaired the piping, the leaking piping sections back in February, but we had to reconnect the cathodic protection of the pipe section. So this is just showing the remaining action that we had to do to complete that repair.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I just want to make sure that that was noted. So we do have that ratification going to the full board as would be our normal process, but we wanted to include that in this report so that you had a quick update on it before it comes to the board.
Thanks. This next effort is, we had like a leak for a long time, but there was an issue to get, we had the piping, but however, to isolate and to allow us to replace this pipe section, that took a lot of coordinations, and we had to procure isolation valve to allow us not to completely shut off recycled water. So we are happy to report that we completed this work in February. That kind of contributed to some of the downtime of potable water usage in February. Any questions? Right, next, here I just want to highlight that this is one of the influent valve for filter six, not one of, but one of the valve, but you see that extensive corrosion issues that we're seeing with all our filters. And this was attributed to partially perhaps with the high doses of ferric chloride that we had to use as a result of the Hyperion upset. But we see these corrosion issues throughout the piping and then the filter. So this is one of the projects that we included in FY 25-26 CIP projects. Next.
Got a question, Chair. Can you go back to the last slide where, of the replacement of that section? How long was the downtime?
This is part of the overall CIP project, the filter project 3, 4, and 6 that was just recently completed. So the filter was offline, and then when we were trying to bring it back online, the torque tube broke because of the corrosion. So we expedited the procurement of the torque tube, and then we find out that the valve is actually stuck and we cannot even replace it. So we also procure the valve, and we will be replacing this in the coming weeks. Because in order to replace the influent valve, we have to bring down the whole train 1 of Tidal Point 2 for a few hours in order to remove the valve, isolate it. So, a lot of coordination. Okay, go to the next slide, and this is another pressure reduced valve replacement at the JMM. So nothing much to highlight there. Last section, just want to bring to board's attention, we completed the phase 5 PLC upgrade, which was the cause of area being offline for a month and a half. And so just want to bring to a close that we're completely done with that project. Happy to report that we are within the project cost. We did include a 15% contingency, as I know during my presentation back then, that because of the there was a lot of unknowns when we put together the RFP. We did end up using the 15% contingency. And part of the reason was that we wanted to honor the Paul agreement, and we didn't want to open up the program logic to the consultant to just look at the program, and we didn't want to go into the infringement of that software license agreement. So we basically utilized the base 5 spec, original spec, and the consultant was just basically writing that program logic from scratch. So a lot of the logic, functional spec, sorry. The functional spec took a lot more time to iron out all the issues with the operator and our designer. So that contributed to the part of the 5 months delay or extension in the project delivery. And the other issue was because we didn't have the Paul program to look at, the language that was used in the Paul program with by converting to the new Rockwell Pantex language. That's a totally different text structure from what I understood. And it actually results in additional scope that we didn't anticipate. So that added time as well as scope. But we work extensively with VA to shave a lot of the change order costs, and which allow us to meet within the total project costs. So we still have some extra optimizations to do, and we will be working on those shortly. The next 2 slides just showing you what was before the program was done, and then the last slide is just showing the updated program PLC screens. That's all I.
Okay, well, thank you. Director Pavey, do you have any additional questions? Okay, if we can go back to page 87, or slide 87, whichever way you want to think of it.
Action slide. Or the various slide.
87 or 107, page 87, that one. Okay, so on this one, two things. One, it would be nice if you either substitute a column or add a column, because you're showing the March to May production and the March to May budgeted production for 25. It would be nice to see what the March to May production was for 24. So maybe add a column or substitute the budgeted column with the column from last year, so we see production up, the same, or lower than it was a year ago for the same period. Because that's the first question I have, if when I look at that is, okay, we're not at budget, but where are we versus where we were a year ago, et cetera.
You want it in the table format versus,
Just like this one, you can just add a column if you want. You can start off with the March, May 24, March, May 25th. It makes the columns a little bit thinner, and you can fit it in, or you can just not have the budgeted and compare it unless, Director Pavey, do you want the budgeted also? Once you add a column, that way we have all the information.
we'll add a column.
It's not that hard to do.
No, it's not.
It's insert and just put in the
Yes.
numbers.
We'll do. Next question.
And that way we can see what the differences are. The other thing is more of a comment. So when we set our budget, the budget is intended to cover the cost of the operations of the plant. And that assumes that we're gonna produce at a certain amount. And by producing that amount, we're gonna recover at maybe not 100% of the cost, but whatever it is that we set as the recovery for the particular budget year. If we're not able to meet our budget, our expenses are still the same,
Some of them are.
Yeah.
pretty much. We save a little bit on chemicals, but not much. Everything else is gonna be pretty much the same.
So for
But
beer, we
with-
have energy, less energy, because that's the most energy intense process. Of product.
Yes, but you're still gonna consume energy, so less energy, but not the prorated amount. You're still gonna consume some energy, okay? Because if you're operating the MFRO with the UV and you're producing at 50%, those UV tubes are still on, the MFRO is still on, it's still consuming a lot of energy, maybe not as much because you're not driving as much water through, but the reduction in the energy is not gonna be 50% less if you're producing 50% less water. So where I'm going with this is if we cannot produce the amount of water that we budgeted, therefore our sales are gonna come in less. Therefore, our revenue will be less than we anticipated. And that delta is being made up by our other revenue basis, which is our portable water sales, and to the extent that we still have it, our standby charge. So the subsidy that is being then, that is benefiting the recycled water is more than we already programmed into this budget when we are not able to meet our production, our budgeted production, and sell the amount of water. If we sell more, then that's great. We're actually gonna generate more revenue, because the inverse of what I said earlier is true. Your costs are not gonna go up linearly with increased production. They will go up because you will use more power, et cetera, but not. So, that's something we should track. And then it begs the next question. why is it that we're not meeting our budgeted target? And is that because of the influent, water quality, or some other issue? And if it's an issue that we can control, then we need to do a better job of controlling that. If it's an issue that we can't control, then whoever caused it really is responsible for making up that deficit. Or should.
You're making an excellent point, and it's getting to, this is where we're shifting our efforts as far as bringing in Jacobs, and the team understands the focus on production to meet those budgeted numbers. But Eric, I was going to have you touch on when you see these numbers here and you see the production of recycled water, and the point that you're making. One thing that you maybe said that I didn't hear is the substitute for potable water. So we still are selling potable water, especially to those refinery customers, and of course our barrier water. So there is somewhat of a recovery, and maybe you can touch on it, because I know that we've discussed this about when we utilize potable water, of course, at the different refineries. It means very different things to West Basin and the costs associated with West Basin.
Yeah, I would say that, there are three levers that cause us to be high or low on our production. First is, feed water quality being challenging and the ebbs and flows we see there. Second is the maintenance issues and the amount of emergency repairs. In fact, one of the bar charts showed a significant amount of emergency repairs constantly going on. And then, of course, lastly is just customer demand. We talked about our barrier success this month of getting up to 11.5 MGD. Well, we could do more, but the barrier is only taking 11.5 MGD. So in each one of those, I'd say that the one that we really have the most control over is the maintenance. And under the new contract structure, the operator will not be able to always only point at water quality as a problem. They will still have to meet production goals, even when water quality becomes challenging. Perhaps not when it becomes impossible to treat, but the new contract structure will put some more safeguards to ensure that the operator can't just throw their arms up and say it's too hard. We need to turn everything down. As you recall from our contract discussions, the new contract will put an emphasis on preventative maintenance so that we can curtail the emergency maintenance that we are clearly in a loop doing. And by doing that, we should see less downtime associated with those emergencies. And then lastly, on the demand, it's really just a matter of what the customers take. And while staff works with each customer at the beginning of the year to try to estimate any significant activities that they have planned that might prevent or impact their total usage over the year, we are predicting an entire year's worth of production, and it's only going to be as good as the information they provide to us. And so getting to EJ's point, the levers that we do have in place right now before that contract, the new operations and maintenance contract is in place, is the ability to supplement with potable water. And what we have found in some of these cases, it's actually cost attractive for us to supplement with potable water versus incurring the entirety of the O&M costs associated with producing recycled water. I see you might have a question.
Well, potable water sells at but we have variables depending on which service we're providing, but generally it's less than the recycled water. With the exception of, well, like I said, I don't have the table in front of me. They're all different rates.
I didn't hear
The portable water that we sell it at a lower cost than some of the recycled water.
Correct. So
To the degree that you're still selling water, but you're selling it at a lower cost, you're not recovering all of the revenue that you would have recovered had you met your production goal.
well, I'll say this. I'll use the barrier, the contract with WRD as an example.
The barrier is they get cheap water.
Correct. But I think it best illustrates what I believe you're pointing at, Director, which is we are charging them today $1,274 per acre foot.
Yes.
per contract for that water. Our cost of service analysis, especially factoring in the historical debt associated with that system, suggests that that water's in the $2,000 range or,
It was higher, but yes.
but of course, we are purchasing Met potable water at a rate of around 1,700. And so the sad reality of it is that when we have to supplement a barrier with potable, it is actually cheaper to do so.
But that assumes that you don't incur a cost at the barrier. I'm sorry, in producing that water. And we talked about that earlier. The fact that you don't produce it, you still have to operate the plant. You still have O&M costs. There's a lot of ongoing costs that are incurred. So if you did the analysis, it would show you that, yes, not only am I losing whatever that delta is because I'm selling them the imported water versus the recycled water, but in addition to that, I'm incurring additional costs that I'm not recovering because I'm not producing that recycled water.
That's
In terms of Met, it would be the treated water surcharge, the big discussion item now. It's like, well, it's the same argument here.
That's correct, Director. And you may recall from the cost of service analysis that we presented to the board in January. When we looked at those costs associated with each one of these recycled waters, we put those costs either into a volumetric bucket or into a fixed bucket. And so things like labor, which we have to pay regardless of how much water we produce, capital costs, we lumped everything that is independent of the volume of water that we sell into a fixed cost. And so while we still may not be recovering those fixed costs through our current contractual structures, we at least know what they are now. And I can share with the Tesoro item that we are hoping to bring back within the next 3 months. We're very much compartmentalizing the fixed costs so that regardless of whether they take as much water as we budget for or not, those fixed costs will be paid for through their fixed payment. And then their volumetric rate will really just be dependent on the volumes they take. But the fact is that we are still set in some of these contracts that were established many, many years ago. And until they run out, we can't make change.
Oh, good. I'm just saying that we ought to, when we're responsible, O&M, and it's our responsibility, then it's our responsibility. But when it's not our responsibility because our inflow water quality is causing a problem, or because of whatever other actions, and we can jump to slide or page, whichever is 89, which is good and bad. Then we have lost. So there, I had some questions there. Let me just ask the question. So for the month of March, we had zero production. Why was that?
Phase 5 project.
No, I'm sorry?
The Phase 5 SCADA project, because the Phase 5 system produced more than half of what needed for the barrier productions. The Phase 4, that is the remaining working MF system, needed to be producing for the Chevron.
So, Director, the project that Susanna talked about beginning on slides 100, PLC upgrade, that shut down Phase 5 entirely. And what that meant was our Phase 5 microfiltration system, which is the majority of our MF production that feeds the RO that produces our barrier treatment. The other microfiltration system, Phase 4, continued to operate, but it was exclusively feeding the Chevron customer for the low pressure and high pressure boiler feeds. And so in essence, that entire month was lost barrier production because of that reprogramming project. And I think that was accounted for in our budgeting of 10,000 acre feet this particular year for barrier.
So that answers that question. Is that the same answer then for the zero production the last week and a half of, April.
Yeah, that entire stretch.
I'm sorry, May.
Yeah, because we were still going through the commissioning process. And we found there was issues with the program. We had to shut it down to correct some of the issues. So not until mid of May, we finally had confidence in the program logic, and we finally was able to bring back phase 5.
Yeah, I would add, that just like a brand new plant during commissioning, right? The MF system has 8 individual units with 8 individual brains, and then they've got the entire system brain. And as they were starting to deploy the individual units, they realized there were some issues, so they had to address those, which is why you see that kind of slow step increase where we were able to bring some units online, but not all until, I guess, May.
All right, so that's ours. Then you go back to some of the previous months and we see that back in September of 24 and in October 24, we had lost production for a short period of time, but that was due to power outage. We responsible for the power outage?
Depending on where it is, generally.
No, for those.
Those are
Those are
drunk driver hitting a pole at
Well, which means we are.
Well, no, it means that where I'm going is either we are, in that case, we're not. And it's not Edison, because it's not it's not a transformer that blew, in which case, if it was, then it is Edison.
So
Responsible.
those 2, August and September, those are like squirrel that fried.
Was it squirrels or was it a truck driver?
Hearing one was a driver, and then we have 2 outages.
So, if it's a truck driver or some other party that's not Edison and not us, then what we should do is go and try to get cost recovery from that party. I understand the truck driver doesn't have the money, but the truck driver does have insurance. And so the typical way that one would do this is one would then say, file a claim with the process for it, and you eventually get to the insurer.
And we have,
And-
let me check the status of that one. I know we've filed a couple of different claims in relation to the airbags along, was it Elsgana Boulevard that got hit by a drunk driver?
And our
What-
JPIA doesn't cover distribution. So
No,
we
but
have to-
the driver's insurance.
I'm going after, you have to go after the driver's insurance. JPIA probably would not cover this. It might, I don't know, for
No,
sure, but I doubt it does.
Your insurance goes after another.
But you go after their insurance companies, whether it's JPIA does it, they pay and they subrogate and then go after them, or we need to do it, but we should be doing that.
And we have. So let me check on that
Well,
one.
we haven't on this one, I bet you.
Well, let me check on the status of that. But we do utilize BBK and we have gone after, I think 2 drivers that I'm aware of, but I don't know the status of this one.
And I apologize, the January event was caused by the whole fire situations in the area, which shut down Hyperion short period of time, so.
There's a lot of people who went after Edison and so on for the fire, so if that's the case, then I would say, hey. And if Edison says, that fire was caused for some other reason, they're in tons of litigation right now because of their role in some of these fires, more in Altadena than here. But they're in litigation, so we should be trying to recover all our costs. And definitely, when it's our responsibility, then we need to manage that and do a better job of managing it. And when we know we're gonna be shutting it down, then we have to deal with that. But when it's not our responsibility, so we have the power outages, and then we also have the Hyperion power outage, which is partially Hyperion and partially the power outage.
And Director, like I said earlier, I think this new O&M contract will give us a better visibility of these issues, especially in the maintenance area where we have had our own deferred maintenance cause these emergency shutdowns, and the new contract structure should allow us to get ahead of that, so we have less of those. And then similarly, even when it comes to water quality upsets from Hyperion, right now, there's no controls in the contract. If the operator just feels the least bit threatened that it might cause harm, they shut down. But under the new contract, we have very specific tiers whereby they can either continue operating through it, or if it gets really bad, then it's an agreed upon discussion to say, let's shut the plant down. And so I think what that will allow us over this next 5-year term is to have a less excuses anytime there's a water quality challenge. It's kind of predefined what a challenge is, and they'll have to live by that.
I'll agree, but there are still, within the new contract or no new contract, there's the issues of actions that happen outside of the, like the truck driver. And we should be going after their insurance for recovery.
I just emailed our human resources department and legal counsel to check the status of it, so.
Okay. And then if we can go to the page 101, which is the programming and the reason for having to shut down during whatever month that was. This is and I don't remember, and I don't know. Is this part of or separate from the DCS
Separate
contract?
from the DCS, this is the PLC level, not the back.
So this is the contract that we awarded.
Went to the court in May in 2024.
Okay,
This is the one where the Pulse system is a proprietary program within the proprietary system. And for us to ultimately use the non-proprietary membrane within their system, we had to essentially gut their controls, establish our own set of controls so that we could be free to purchase at a significant savings an alternative membrane product.
all those are in the little picture that you got in there. That's all new PLCs.
Had hardware and we have.
So that's the new, we had to buy the PLCs, we had to program and basically, if I had seen a picture of that before, that was substituted in, there'll be the PAW system. Okay, and now we went with Allen Bradley.
This is Allen Bradley, but we actually, this is the old one, actually. The Rockwell Pandex is the new controller.
So that is Paul.
So this is PAW,
Yes.
and they had the logic
Yeah,
behind.
we didn't grab a picture of the new system, sorry.
All right, so this is the separate contract, and I think I had some comments and issues with that one, but okay, I understand. Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
No, it's getting closer to an hour.
Yeah. We said we'd get you out of here before an hour. So, we will move on. We're done with the information calendar. There are no closed session items. So there are director comments, the future plan, or future agenda items. So Director Pavay, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
None at this time, Director.
Okay. Well, I have one comment, and I would just like to recognize, I think, our public information team, or whoever, and all of the staff, I think, for getting on Sunset Magazine. I just learned about it today. I hadn't seen it. I don't subscribe to Sunset Magazine. But this is I think, a very important opportunity, not only for us, but to educate the public at large to the value of water and the need to replace turf with drought-tolerant gardens, and that drought-tolerant gardens should look very attractive. I think the spreads that were shown in the Sunset Magazine article are very nice. So kudos to the staff for that. Really something that we should be proud of, and I'd like to see more of that in the future. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I would say, if you haven't had a chance, or members of the public haven't had a chance, today's Public Information Education Committee actually did a great overview of some of the success stories as far as our applications go. And we attribute a lot of that to efforts like that, where we're getting it out to different audiences, really showing visuals of what you can do with your properties. And we are seeing a significant increase in the number of applications and requests for design services. So it's great.
So I have not read the article. Like I said, I just saw it at the meeting when, in the article, we're giving credit for, they do refer to the West Basin Municipal Water District Turf Replacement Program and so on.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good article that really gives, I think, a lot of credit to our programs and allowances for those gardens.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay, with that, I don't have any other comments, and we will adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 16th. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.